If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Redondo Beach, California and the surrounding South Bay area, then hit subscribe so you can stay current in what's happening in Redondo Beach. My name is David Coe. I have lived in Redondo Beach for over 30 years and been a realtor for the last 20. Myself and my team at the Coe Real Estate Group, we love to help people navigate the move here to Redondo Beach. And whether that's 9 days or 900 days away for you, we would love to be connected with you. All of our contact info is in the description, and we'd be happy to help you make a smooth move to Redondo Beach or the South Bay area. Everyone, David Coe at the Coe Real Estate Group. Hey, welcome back to South Bay Living. One of the questions we get asked all the time are from people that bought their first home and now they're ready to buy their second home, and they want to go through and figure out whether or not they should keep that first home as a rental property or sell it and roll the funds into their next home. Well, that certainly creates some complications when you have a rental property in California. So I thought I'd bring my good friend Eileen Kendall on and talk about some of the things that you should be thinking about if you are going to have a rental property here in Southern California. Eileen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining today.
You're welcome. Hi, David.
Hey, so I know you are a landlord side attorney dealing with tenant landlord issues, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about your firm and what you do?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Eileen Kendall. I am the founding attorney of Kendall Law. We're a full service real estate litigation firm. About 75% of our practice is dealing with landlords, all the way from compliance to courtroom. So we help work with landlords to protect and comply and prevail in court. It's a very essential that compliance is our number one focus lately, just because there's so many laws in place. And by the time you get to court, and if you haven't complied, you're too late. Compliance is your best defense.
All right, so let's say I've got that house, little 2 bedroom 1 bath house. I bought it and I want to rent it out. The first question that I know I always kind of talk to people about is whether you should hire a property manager versus managing it yourself. Sometimes people are actually moving out of state and they still want to self-manage that property. Talk about maybe some things that people should be thinking about when they're deciding whether they should manage it versus hiring a property manager.
The really big thing is time, is understanding the time constraints that you may have. If there's maintenance that need to be done, I do have clients that either are out of state or in Northern California, and if they have to deal with something that needs them to be present, the time that they have to take away from their normal activities to get there. As well as, just dealing with the day to day, as much as you would love for a client just to move in and not have issues, there is that aspect of little things that come up and whether or not it can be done remotely versus somebody that's local that can just stop by. But time is really the biggest constraint that I see in the difference between self-managing and getting somebody to help assist in managing.
Yeah, I mean, beyond the time, it's resources, right? Like, first of all, do you have to rent it, right? Do you have the ability to do background checks on people and look at their application? And then once they're in, do you know who a plumber is? Do you know who an electrician is? Do you have a handyman? Do you have a stable of people that, even if you live locally, there are issues that come up that you're required to address by law. And if you don't do it properly, you could be setting yourself up for liability, correct?
Absolutely. And that's a good point too, is there are a lot of now resources out there, companies that offer those types of services, like the managing of intake of applications and that process, and portals that you can use to help guide those things. And they probably also have service providers. So it's educating, and that'll be a theme throughout everything, is educating, if you're going to self-manage, the ability to get into one of those services to help manage those. But certainly that is a huge part of it, is having the resources available to take care of all the small things. Certainly you're not going to want to be the plumber or the electrician. You're going to want to have those resources available. And if you don't have those, then it's probably better to bring somebody on that may have that access.
Yeah, I think it's important to say I don't manage, even though I've got a real estate license, I do not manage properties. It's a pain, like managing properties. The people that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, even good tenants can go crazy sometimes. And even if you hire a property manager, you might not be the first call, but you're the second call, right? Because
Yeah.
the property manager is going to call you. Um, well, look, whether or not you hire a property manager or decide that you want to self manage it, you still need to know what's going on, right? I mean, ultimately, the buck stops with you. If I'm sued for something, I can't say, "Well, my property manager didn't tell me that," right? That's not a defense.
It's not. And more importantly, is a lot of management agreements have indemnification. So typically what will happen is if your manager isn't doing something right, they're going to sue the owner and they're going to sue the management company. And then the management company is going to look to you, even if they've done something wrong for that defense. And it's critical to know your management agreement. It's critical to know what your insurance requirements are. I have a case right now where the PM agreement, the property management agreement, required the management company to be a co-insured, and
Mm.
my client didn't do it. And now they're demanding indemnification for the potential claims that are being filed for wrongful termination. And so understanding your PM agreement and knowing what liabilities you have, because yes, the buck stops with you. You're the property owner, regardless of whether or not you know what's happening with the property, you're going to be sued, and you've got to be in contact with your property management company. You need to be in the know. You can't blindly let your management company do their, manage the property. Check in, see what's going on, look at the records, check on the property once a year, do, your due diligence, and not blindly rely on management companies, because unfortunately not all management companies are good.
I'm curious, just off the top of your head, what percentage of your clients have property managers versus those that don't?
Yeah, so we have two types of clients. We represent probably about 12 different management companies. So we deal directly with management companies and not owners. And
Mhm.
then I would say only about 20% of our 75% of cases are, mom and pops that self-manage.
All right. Well, look, let's assume then. I love the line you said that compliance is the best defense, right? And man, we live in California. If there's any state that has as much compliance laws, that we are probably at the upper end of that scale. And we also live close to Los Angeles, which has a whole nother series of rules and regulations you have to follow. So, talk about what that means when you say compliance is the best defense.
Yeah, the worst thing is when you get a client that is self-managing and they want to terminate for owner occupancy, or they want to do something to terminate the tenancy and they have no idea about all of the registration requirements or the laws and the notices and all of the things that are required to be in compliance with the state or even the local law. Because we have two levels of law. We have the law at the state level that says multifamilies are subject to these rules with these notices and these addendums. And then you have your local jurisdictions that have their own laws that are much stricter than the state law. And those are the ones that are going to govern. For instance, if you have a property in the city of LA, now, even if it's a single family home, you're subject to their just cause provisions. You have to register the property and pay the registration. You have to serve that registration. You have to serve the notice of protection. You have to serve the notice of right to counsel. And if you've not done any of those things, you don't have a right to collect rent. And certainly if you have a property that's not subject of LA, but is subject to the state law, if you don't give certain disclosures, and while I love you real estate agents, one of my favorite things is when I get a client that says my agent did the lease, my property's exempt, but they didn't check the exemption box. You've not effectively given that notice of exemption, and now you can't terminate that tenancy for owner occupancy because you didn't comply with the law. And if you try to start an eviction, that's the first thing that defense counsel is going to look for, are those mistakes. Doesn't matter how minute the mistake is, they're going to try to find that. And then you've lost all of your leverage, and you either have to get into an unfavorable settlement or you dismiss and have to start over the case because you didn't comply. I mean, there's so many cities now that require you to submit the notice to the portal, and if you don't do that within 3 days, your notice is invalid. So there's so many little things that if you are not complying, you're not going to win. And so you have to comply, maintain that leverage of a good case. And we've seen it play out in both ways. I've had cases where they've come to us and the prior attorney didn't do anything right, and we have to dismiss the case because they're, going to rack up the legal fees. We start over, and even though they challenge it, we get a settlement in days because there's nothing for them to bite their teeth into, and we get a favorable result for our client because they don't have anything. If you do it right, they can't challenge it. I mean, certainly they can challenge it, but they're not going to be successful, and you have all of the leverage.
Yeah, at least you've got something to stand behind if you did it right. And especially if you did it right working with someone like you, right? Versus a realtor who's doing leases, which I can tell you right now, most realtors that do leases are not very experienced. That's why they're doing leases. So, even if you are going to take on this on your own, hire a realtor to help out, you still need someone like Eileen, an attorney, to help guide you through this so you don't create a huge problem for yourself down the line.
And
Eileen,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And being educated generally, even if you have a management company or are using a realtor, is understanding the law. Unfortunately, one of our clients was one of those people. There was an article in the LA Times about a serial plaintiff filer that had been filing cases throughout LA for Section 8. And unfortunately, the agent that was doing the leasing didn't understand Section 8, told the prospective tenant that she didn't understand it, talked to my client. My client also didn't understand it, relied on the agent to say, well, I don't understand it, so let's not do it. The agent didn't correct them, and my client had to pay a ton of money out of pocket because that's pure liability. You can't deny Section 8. Had my client had the little bit of knowledge to know that you can't discriminate based on Section 8 and had been on that, he or she may have been able to say to her agent, oh, be careful, don't do that, let's talk to them, right? And had protected both of them. But because they weren't educated, they were relying on the professional, because that's what they do. They're going to rely, most mom and pop owners are going to rely on the management company, going to rely on the agent. And if the agent isn't educated or the PM isn't educated, both are going to be in a world of hurt.
Not only did I read that story, but our brokerage sent out an alert to advise us that if we're dealing with any leases, that you have to accept applications on Section 8. I'm sure your client lost money. I bet you that brokerage had to pay some money too.
I don't know. They were trying to make a point, I think, and at the point that my client settled out, they had not settled. We're actually seeking indemnification against that brokerage.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for hours on other horror stories about this, but I wanted to at least give people the idea that, look, if you wanted, and by the way, I am all for owning property, but don't go rogue on this. Don't go gunslinger on this. If you're going to do it and you live in California, make sure you're working with someone like Eileen, that you understand what you're getting yourself into, and don't wait until something goes wrong. Right? Start from scratch. Make sure you do things right up front so you don't create some huge issue. Trust me, I know Eileen, you would much rather work with her up front than having to hire her when you're going to court, because she's a lot more expensive when you're going to court, especially when you've done something wrong in managing your property. So, all right, Eileen. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining. This has been a really informative talk. We're going to put Eileen's contact information down here below. So if you're contemplating managing property, or even if you manage property or you own property right now and you're looking for someone to give you some good advice, you can either contact Eileen directly or give me a call, contact me, and I'll get you connected to her. Eileen, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, David. It was always a pleasure.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hey, if you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button down below. We are constantly generating great content about home ownership here in the South Bay of Los Angeles, and sometimes even about home rentership, if that's what you're looking to do. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.